Welcome, Carm Capriotto, the Service Aftermarkets Podcast Pioneer, with the gold standard of aftermarket business podcasts. Join me for Aftermarket Insights as we advance the aftermarket. And as always, know that you'll learn just one thing. Find us on your favorite podcast listening app and remarkableresults.biz or on my YouTube channel. Hey everybody, Carm Capriotto, Remarkable Results Radio, another Town Hall Academy. Hey, thanks for listening to the premier automotive repair business podcast. So glad to have you here. Got a great topic, a really good topic today. We're going to talk about, is your business ready to sell? But first, thanks so much to our great sponsors. You know, for over 30 years, NAPA Trax has made selecting the right shop management system easy by offering the best, most comprehensive SMS in the industry. Find NAPA Trax on the web at napatracs.com. And hey, are you ready to optimize training with today's class? Roll out a training plan for your automotive shop. I have played with this. It is the coolest. I know people that are in it. It is a blast. It really helps. In just 5 minutes daily, boost knowledge, retention, and improve team performance. Start seeing results today. Join your peers at today'sclass.com. Hey, if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, and thanks. Hey, meet my panel. Joe Marconi is here, former shop owner and elite worldwide coach and great contributor to the podcast. Thank you, Joe.
Oh, pleasure to be here. Thank you. Thank you.
And for his first time, Dan Buss is here, also an elite worldwide coach and a wise gentleman of ours, because he's going to be telling us all about that. He sold his business a little bit ago, about a year and a half?
Just over 2 years now.
Over 2 years now. And so you're not retired, but you're retired.
Semi, I called it.
All right. Good to hear. Nick Salas is with us from Salas Auto Repair since 1993, Nick. That's been a while.
Yes, it has.
It's been a while. Kansas City, Missouri, and Overland Park, Kansas, 2 stores.
Correct.
And you're in the process of selling those 2 locations to a son-in-law.
That's correct.
Now, that's an internal person. He's currently working?
He is. He's been working here for about 4 years.
4 years. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Did you hire him with that in mind?
No, I didn't actually. He knew nothing about the automotive, and his family's in the insurance business, and he didn't want to get in the insurance business, and he seemed interested. So he came on board, and we started him at the bottom, answering the phones, working up front, and he's caught on extremely quick. He's doing a great job.
Good for you. And let's talk about that during this podcast. I am extremely curious about a bunch of things, and hopefully we can cover them in this episode. I'm worried and concerned about transparency, how critical it is to a deal like this. What if we're struggling and we think we want to get out? Is there an opportunity to do that? Should you take your time? Should you rush something through? Should you tell your team? What about guilt or regret? Maybe there's a little bit of that going on. I know you guys have clients that may have some of that. Tax liabilities. What about the property? What about good financials? Yeah. And the type of sale that we want to do, because sometimes there's an asset purchase and sometimes it's a stock purchase, and they all have ramifications, not only for the seller, but also for the buyers. And maybe we can cover a little bit of that. So, Joe, let's start.
Sure.
You told me one day, Carm, you always have to have that business ready to sell.
You really do. That's advice I got from my father when I bought my first house in 1985. He told me the day after, great, now get it ready to sell tomorrow. And I said, what are you talking about, Pop? I just moved in. He says, you never know when life is going to throw you a curveball. He says, so always have your house ready to sell. Keep it well maintained. And that's the same thing with your business. One of the things I hear about, like financials, a lot of shop owners don't want to do the financials or they struggle with it. But if they only understood that you can't wait until you're 3 or 5 years before you want to sell to begin to have clean financials. And that's just one area. You have to have financials clean throughout your entire business career. So, because again, you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. And if you need to sell in a hurry, or you need to sell next year, whatever, or let's say something happens, to make it as tractable as possible to a potential buyer, You need to have clean financials, systems and processes, everything that goes along with having a healthy business. So yeah, have it ready to sell at all times. It doesn't mean you're going to sell, don't get me wrong, but to have it ready to sell, you're going to be more profitable. You're going to have less stress in your life. You're going to develop a team of people around you that are amazing. There's a lot of benefits to having your business running as smoothly as possible, and what I call ready to sell at any time.
Ready to say. Michael Gerber wrote, of course, the E-Myth, and when I remember rereading or read the third version of the E-Myth, I think it was in the first couple of pages, he said every decision that you make should
Makes,
go toward the day that you're going to decide to sell your business. And so,
yeah.
Nick, question that I have for you on selling to the son-in-law, or I don't care if internal candidate, key employee, it's an individual within the business. Did you hire your son-in-law for that in mind? Was there a moment in time where you said, it's time for me to get out, we need time to make this thing work, we have to elevate his particular position, we have to come up with a formal plan and a date? How does what take us to the day where all of a sudden, boom, lightning hit?
Well, my situation is probably a little bit different. I had, before he came along, I had 3 different companies that wanted to buy me out. One of them, actually, one of the guys was secret shopped me at both of my locations, had his car serviced. I met with him. I was considering having him buy me out, but I've been doing this for 33 years, 32 years. I've got a lot of loyal employees, and I was concerned about if I sold it, what would change for them. So it kind of held me off a little bit. Then my wife and I were having a conversation. My daughter caught wind of it, and she goes, "Well, Chase would be interested. That's my son-in-law. He would be interested in coming to work for you, and maybe he could eventually buy you out." So once he showed some interest, I thought, well, shoot, it'd be nice to keep it in the family. It's been good to me. I know he'll do a good job with it, and I can still be a part of it to some extent, but I'll be out. So the other 3 entertaining offers, one of them was Tire, a couple other ones that offered, but I kind of turned those down and stayed on the path with my son-in-law buying me out. I think it's a little more difficult to sell it to a family member or someone internal. It's just a little bit
It
more,
is.
it's not as easy to walk away and just get a check and one day you're gone. So it makes it a little bit more difficult in that perspective.
You guys want to add to that thought? Because
Yeah,
I think that's really a critical point in this episode, Joe.
yeah, because let me just piggyback on that point that you just made, Nick, and that's a very important point. I had 2 people in mind that worked for me, 2 managers at one point or another, and I had a few locations, and that I thought they would be the person to be my successor. The first one I found out after putting him in the position, this guy wasn't the person that I thought he was. The second person that I still to this day believe that he could do it, could have done it. Once I moved him up to that position where now you're going to start taking over, I can see that he didn't have the confidence in himself. So plans change, things change, and I ended up not having a successor, but having someone that I knew for a long time, who was in business for a long time, eventually buy my company. So you got to be very, very careful. I think that if you're going to have someone in place like Nick has, you've got to put that person in the position to run the country for a length of time, a long length of time. Because think about how difficult it is for us going to business with that decision to get our act together. It could take you years and years. I'm still trying to find it out after 41 years, right? So I think that the best thing is you've got to give them time to grow, but be put in the position to feel all the pain points, the rewards, the ups and downs, everything, the sleepless nights. It takes all that to truly find out, is this the right person that's going to be my successor?
I agree.
So, Dan, you're hearing some really interesting things here, and you're a veteran of selling like Joe is. Your particular perspective here.
So, it's interesting because I had a success, and my general manager, who was with me for 21 years, we had a full contract. He was a small shareholder. My original plan was not to sell till 2028. And I got approached by a couple companies like Nick did in 2022. And I felt it was time. I wasn't going to wait till 2028. So I sat down with my general manager, and lo and behold, he didn't want to pursue it. He decided that he did not
Yep.
want to
Yep.
be in this state for long term, and his plans had changed to move out of state in the future. So he declined the purchase.
Okay.
So I went after the two companies who contacted me. And to back up what Joe says about having clean books, we kept tidy books, we kept our,
Yeah.
procedures and everything in place. And from LOI to closing was less than 3 months.
Wow, that's quick.
The LOI, letter of intent, if anyone wants to, in the audience, is kind of learning and new to this thing. There's a lot of acronyms, non-disclosure agreements, NDAs, LOIs, all of that stuff. And I think it's important to brush yourself up, even just hire an expert to help you walk through that chair.
Yeah.
One of the things, Dan, that you brought up, and I'm starting to think about the price versus an internal. Even though you were talking 2028 and you hadn't come up with a price or an evaluation of the business, but here you are looking at what you wanted with either a multiple or a business valuation. Do you think you would have gotten more on the outside? And maybe that's a great question for you, Nick, too.
I did a evaluation on the business. I hired someone to do it, and it came in at a number that I was comfortable with, and that's what my son-in-law's buying it for. The other companies that approached me, I never got that far with them, so who knows what they would have paid? Maybe I would have got more, but we've been working through this for over a year, and my appraisal was a year and a half old now, and the business has grown substantially since he's come on board. So honestly, it's probably worth quite a bit more now than it was when I did the evaluation on the business. I hired an outside source to do that.
Nick, is it a multiple today that we're after, Joe? Guys, what are we after when you say valuation? Is it a multiple or not?
I think to Nick's point, you need to have a professional do that evaluation. You really do. When you start talking multiples, I don't want to go down that road of giving the audience a rule of thumb, because it just doesn't hold true. Let me go back to what I said earlier, and Dan Buss agrees with me. You've got to have really clean financials to a point where when you're ready to sell, they look at a history, a pattern of growth, of net profits. If you don't have that, multiples don't mean anything, because they're going to make a determination by what, years of business, equipment. That's not really the value. And if you're not selling the property with the business, you're going to be in a tough place to sell that business. So you got to leave it to a professional person that knows how to evaluate the business, the equipment. If you're including property, there's systems, processes go into place. The more automatic the business, there's a lot to that. To that.
See, I had mine on a multiplier.
You did a multiple, Dan. Before you go too far, let's explain to the audience. And again, I'm not explaining to my audience that they do or don't know. But if you're serious about getting into this, there's different ways. Valuations are a multiple. A multiple basically says, and I think they use an EBITDA number, earnings before tax, depreciation, amortization. And if you were, say, for example, really strong business, you're making $350,000 a year. Great revenue, good margins. Someone may come up and say, I'll offer you 3.5 times your multiple. And so that would be 350 times 3.5. And I think you're like at $1 million, because everybody wants to retire, Joe, with $1 million sale. I know that. Right?
Yeah.
That's Disney.
Yeah.
But it's Disney if you make it Disney, right, Dan?
And
yes. Correct.
And again, it goes back to, the sooner you can get your business on cruise control, to have everything in place, team development, employee development, the better off you're going to be. The more attractive that business looks to a potential buyer or anybody looking at it. I too had other big companies come to me beforehand, and it just wasn't the right deal. I played hardball, maybe because I'm from New York. I played hardball. I went, this is my number. I showed them, and that's it. Don't argue with me, because I did the math. I did the same thing Nick did. I got a professional company to evaluate the property, and I have multiple locations too. You can only be that confident when you've done your homework. So one of the advice I'm going to give to everybody listening out there is, I don't care if you're 25 years old, 45, 65. I don't care where you are in your business today, or if you think you're going to be in business for the next 150 years. You got to get your business humming just like a fine-tuned machine as soon as you can, and keep it running that way, because life can throw you a curveball. And when you finally make that decision that you've had enough, you're in a good position.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
Yeah.
I tried to buy a business about a year ago, and we're talking about financials being clean. 2 locations. This guy's had it for 20, 25 years. His health went bad. His books weren't clean. Taking cash under the table out of one of the shops. You could tell by looking up ROs. There's RO numbers that were missing. Cash was gone. He admitted to me that he's taking cash out. When you look at that business after 20, 25 years of being in business, and you look at, if you do a three multiple, the business was worth $60,000-$70,000 because he's taking so much cash out of it.
Sin.
And so here he is. He can't sell the business. He ended up just selling the real estate. The business wasn't worth anything at that point. He had to shut it down because his health caught up with him. Didn't have time to work through it and get his books clean enough.
Yeah, but Nick, listen, you got to listen to me. I took $100,000 of cash out this year. You got to put it back in your evaluation, Nick.
Yeah,
You got
exactly.
to go, right?
Exactly.
That's the problem.
Yeah, you're right,
Nobody
Dan.
cares.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank
saying
you
that.
for that.
And that's the critical piece. You don't give somebody a box of receipts and you don't tell somebody that, I think I took 80. If it's not believable and if it's not on paper, it's nothing.
But and really, is that a business you want to buy? I don't
It's
want to
not.
buy a business. Once he told me that, I turned me off.
Yeah.
Because
And
if he's taking cash, what do the employees think?
yes.
Is it
And
all
what's
right?
the culture of the business and how good are the
Culture.
clients?
Yeah.
Those clients come in for a deal.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And
You don't have
employees see what's going on.
Oh yeah.
Our own numbers and stuff. So if the owner is taking cash out of the business, there's a good chance that you're going to be inheriting employees who are
Yeah.
doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And they're not doing the right things. And there's probably a lot of unsavory things going on. And you just don't want to buy.
It's not a
business.
business. It's not a
Shady.
true
It's not,
business.
no.
It's not a true
No.
business. It really
It's a
is.
hobby.
Thank you for saying that. We've been, 9.5, almost 10 years doing this with 1,000+ podcasts. That's our purpose. Our purpose is, God, the top shops listen to us. But then the next group is who I love to broadcast to, because we want to change their mind, change their culture, change their future by listening
Yeah.
to this and occasionally hearing nasty, nasty. Don't do that. Not if you have great plans someday for the cottage at the lake. Oh, God, I got to pay for college. There's so many things for wealth building, Joe, that can be done in a
Well,
great
Yeah,
business.
take this to the bank. Literally take it to the bank. When you run your business, forget about that cash on this side under the table. Because I'm, like everybody knows I'm from the Bronx, and a lot of that was the way it was back then. It really was. I remember when I first went to business, I did some work for a body shop, and I gave the guy the bill. He needed some cars aligned, tires, and everything else on some of his customers' cars. So I give him the bill. He pulls out cash and says, "You're not giving me an invoice, are you?" I says, "Yeah." He says, "Put the cash in your pocket. Don't worry about it." But you know what? That's not the way we should do business. And I didn't want to go down that road. But I'll make you one promise, everyone listening out there. You will be more profitable. You will build more generational wealth, and you will have a business to sell that will sell for what you want if you just do things on the up and up, generate a profit, understand your numbers, have a good team of employees around you, and I guarantee you will have that cottage on the lake and everything else you want with it. Just do it the right way. That's money in the bank.
Yep. I agree.
And I've
Okay.
seen it firsthand.
Yeah, I have
Yeah,
too.
very good, Dan. And let's go back to the years you've been in business. And there was a moment in time, Dan, that you probably needed some help to get yourself aligned on that business track.
Yes, absolutely. And, I joined, I don't remember the exact year, but joining Pro Service and working with the Elite Pro Service, that is how I learned how to set a succession plan and to have a plan on what I was going to do. I always kept clean books. Early in the business, I had a partner that actually owned the business. I ended up purchasing the business from him, but he didn't keep clean books. And one of the things that really bothered me being in business with him was him not keeping clean books. And I told him that had to stop. And then I eventually, very shortly after, just bought him out of the business. But I didn't have a succession plan either. And that was something that we did in pro service, was work on succession plans. So I had built a 10-year succession plan. I ended up selling 4 years into my 10-year succession plan.
Hey, let's face it, your shop management system is the single most important tool in your shop, period. NAPA Trax has made selecting the right shop management system easy by offering the industry's best, most comprehensive SMS. Now, it all starts when a local representative meets with you to learn about your business and how you need to run it. After all, it's your shop, so it's your choice, and having local representation is a huge plus. Customizing Trax to your business, whether you're a one-person shop or a large multi-bay or multi-location company, a representative consults with you to help optimize your shop's workflow, efficiency, and profitability. Trax always has the flexibility to do business how you need to do it, which means it can also grow as your business grows. And unlike the other guys, will be there for you after installation with the best training and support in the business. Yes, a learning management system tailored to each role in your company. Simply put, Trax was designed and built for shop owners just like you. Visit us on the web at NAPATrax, that's NAPATRACS.com. Transform your team with today's class, where automotive training is easy, quick, and fun. Just 5 minutes a day on our app can eliminate hours of looking up forgotten information later. It's perfect for technicians, advisors, and managers alike. Keep critical knowledge fresh and top of mind, ensuring your team operates at peak efficiency. Today's class is impactful, accessible from anywhere, and a bit of fun too, and we're not talking about after-hours pizza either. For training that gets results, turn to todaysclass.com. I'm interested on a 10-year plan, Dan. Did the plan start with really refining the profitability, finding great people, or did you just basically say, on this date in 10 years, I'm selling the business? What did it look like? What was the 10-year plan like?
So there was multiple pieces to it. Part of it was, what if something happened to me? What if I got hit by a bus? What's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
And we had that scenario at one of our yearly conferences where one of our group members died on the way to the conference. And it really shook everybody up because he had no succession plan. People didn't know what to do. His son, who was in the business, didn't even know how people got paid. Everything of how that business operated was on a thumb drive in his pocket, and that never got recovered from the accident scene. So they literally had to shut the business down until they figured out how to run the business. And I think they were shut down for 6 months and then reopened. So it was a big eye opener to not only have an emergency plan, but a succession plan on where I'm going with the business. What is my end goal with this business? So I put together a emergency plan if something was to happen to me, insurance policies in place, figuring out if my wife wanted to take over the business or just wanted out, which is a huge question. And then I had a rock solid manager who helped me grow the business, and he wanted to take over that business. So that part of it was very fortunate that I had somebody interested, and he became not only my emergency plan, but my 10-year succession plan. So we built a 10-year plan where he earned some stock in the business. He was getting dividend checks, and that would be his down payment over that 10 years.
There's some really creative ways to do it, Joe. We've done shows on that, Dan, in the past, and have heard those creative ideas.
Well, yeah, you can structure a deal any way you want, and depending upon who's buying it, will depend on how that's structured. And you have to take into consideration a number of things. You know, do you own the property? Like Dan said earlier, do you own the property? Nick said earlier. If you own the property, are you retaining the property? Is that going to go along with the deal? Do you have multiple locations? Do you own property at each location? How far are you into the mortgage? You know, so tax implications. In other words, you got to speak to an accountant, financial advisor. How you structure that deal matters, because you may be left with a lot of capital gains tax, which is not the end of the world, by the way. Just pay the capital gains sometimes. It's not the end of the world. It really isn't. I was left with a big check to write, but I also had big money made on the deal of my company. So listen, it is what it is. If you're not paying taxes, you're not making any money. So don't worry about that. But I think you have to have two things in place. Let me just piggyback on what Dan said. He had a great manager in place. That's very, very important. If you don't have great people around you, you will be held back in your business. You are only as successful as the people you surround yourself with. That's it. And it starts with your internal team. From there, you have to have a professional team of advisors. And not to promote the lead in what I do now, you got to have a coach. You got to have a coach, a good CPA. So much entails with that.
I totally agree with the coach, and I agree with it for all the episodes that we've ever done, and Joe, all the stuff and all the great coaches we've had on. I'm getting to the point, Joe, where I want to call you guys experts.
Well,
honest to God, I just, for some reason, I love that. Coaches, okay, I'll go get a football coach or a golf coach, or am I going to hire an expert?
Yeah, there you go. I love it. I've been with Elite since the mid-90s. So I was a client of Elite before I became a coach. I worked very part-time when I was still had my company. But now that I'm retired, Elite has a way of pulling you back in, So just when you think you're out, they pull you back in, right?
It's a quote from The Godfather 3.
Just when you think you're out, Elite pulls you back in. So it's true. You're never out of the business.
And to back up what Joe said, have the right people in place, have the right accountant, have the right attorneys. Yes, they're going to cost you a lot of money, but when I did my sale, I didn't use my normal accountant for the sale. I went to a company that a friend of mine who had 12 locations used when he sold his. And because my company who did my monthly P&Ls and did my yearlies and all of that, they weren't experienced in sales. By going to a company that was experienced in sales, they knew loopholes.
Good point.
Right? So they saved me almost $60,000 by just telling me how to do it to pay the state before the federal government, and then you could deduct that. I mean, it was big money that they saved me by hiring the right people and the experts.
Yeah, there's a lot of accountants out there that have a business valuation, if you will, degree or an association accreditation that really get what you're trying to do as far as to find. My good friend Hunt Demarest is.
Hunt Demarest does that. Yep,
Hunt does that. Yeah.
Let me tell you, capital gains is no joke.
No, it's not.
Yeah, and
serious money.
Did you guys ever hire? This is maybe a little side question for Joe and Dan. Did you ever have a brand new client, come on and says, "You don't understand, Joe. I don't pay taxes." Anybody? Did you ever have a client like that?
Well, not necessarily, but the goal from a lot of clients is not to pay taxes, and I get that. And to a certain degree,
there's a way to do it.
You don't want to pay. You want to pay your fair share, and that's it. So if you don't have the right accountant, if you're not keeping, again, it goes back to what I said earlier. If you're not keeping clean your books. Right. So whose fault is it if you have lousy books, and if you're relying on what stream of reports? Is it from your business system? Is it a P&L? Do you have a clean balance sheet? So there's a lot going on. Are you mixing personal things into your P&L, which is that's a big red flag. So again, you've got to have, it's a responsibility of every shop owner out there to understand the numbers of the business. And I get it. I was a former technician. I preferred, when I first started in business, to work on cars rather than work on the numbers. But while I was growing a business, I was failing miserably because I didn't understand cash flow. I didn't understand the numbers. It changed my life when I started looking at the numbers and saying, wow, I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. There's where I'm losing the money. So you got to get your act together in terms of understanding the numbers of the business.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about confidentiality, transparency, which I think are really big steps here. Dan, Nick, basically, did you tell the team up front that son-in-law is going to take over the business? Did you tell them right away?
I told him he probably worked here about a year.
Okay.
Before we introduced that to him. I came clean with him. I told him, there's some other businesses that were interested. And I told him what I felt. I didn't feel comfortable selling it to someone I didn't really know because I was afraid of the changes that may take place. And I didn't want the business to be ran into the ground like some of these big companies will buy them and the numbers won't be as strong. Next thing you know, employees are leaving. I think Dan experienced a little bit of that maybe, but I think that happens. So we came clean with him and just said, look, he didn't want to start it. He didn't want to just come in and say he's going to buy it. He wanted to start at the bottom to gain that respect.
That's
So he's
good.
done every phase of the job to gain the respect from the employees, and they totally respect him, and they're excited about where the business is going by having
What's
under
his,
leadership.
what's his current title, Nick?
He's right now, he's just general manager.
He's general manager. Will you make him an officer of the company soon?
He will be, and actually in 2 weeks,
Okay, great.
49% owner.
Wow.
He'll be
Wow.
paying me half of the business. And, that's a tough deal too, when you're selling it internally or when you're selling it outright. It's hard for someone, unless they got money, to come in and buy one of these businesses if they don't own something. You got to own
Absolutely.
more than just a house. You got to have liquid assets to put up for collateral when you're buying a business for $2 or $3 million.
Yeah, if you were going to get some money from him, he's got to have some equity and or some ownership if the bank's going to take the note. I got it.
Yeah, and we're doing a stock sale, and we had to structure it a little bit different. So I had to put up one of the pieces of real estate for collateral for him in order to purchase the business that'll fall off after he pays a certain amount of the note off.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which it worked. That's fine with me because I own all the real estate.
Yeah, it's probably easier to do, explain this to me, guys, if it's an internal candidate family member to do a stock sale rather than an asset sale. Is that the smartest way to do it?
I think it'd be both ways.
It could be both ways. It really
Okay.
can. It
I
really
did that.
can. Yeah. It could be
It
either
depends
way.
on if they want to take your liabilities on, basically.
Well, it's true too. It depends where the owner is in his or her life. So if I was selling when I was younger, I might want to retain some of the ownership, be there longer, maybe retain the property. But once you get to a certain point in your life, sometimes the shop owner, like what I did really, because I said I want out of everything. I want everything to be clean. Let me just walk away.
No
I didn't
property.
want it. Well, I had the property, but I sold the property too with the
Okay.
deal because I felt at that time I didn't ran the numbers and everything else, and when you come down to it, again, it's an emotional event. It really is. It's more than just X's and O's and writing up on paper. It's an emotional event. I was a shop owner for 41 years. I was a 25-year-old kid when I first started, and you just don't walk away from a business like that without a bunch of emotions. To this day, in the middle of the night, I still have that 2 o'clock wake-up call thinking that what's going on at the shop.
Yeah.
To this day.
Yeah.
And I sold in December of 2021. So it's in us. That's who we are as business owners. And Nick, you're going to do the same thing. It'll always be part of you. Always be part of you.
When I announced to the staff, I had tears rolling down my face.
Oh,
There you go.
I could imagine.
Yeah. Well, let me just piggyback on what Nick said too about telling your staff. Again, it depends where you are. I mean, if you're in business for a year, it doesn't make any sense to tell your employees, yeah, my plan is to sell in 40 years. That's one thing. But there's going to come a time in your life where you've done everything you're supposed to do, and you make that decision, say, you know what, I think this is enough for me. I'm 60, I'm making this up. I'm 60 years old. I'm looking at 5 years down the road. I've done all I wanted to do at this point. At that point, you got to be transparent with your people. You really do. Because once you start the process of going to a broker or putting it out there through your friends, local shop owners, people are going to find out. You bet your employees should find out from you, as Nick did and Dan did, as opposed to finding out, through the grapevine. So you owe it to your staff. Once you make that decision, just be upfront and honest. I don't like what I told my people. The same thing. I was very emotional that day. I don't know what it looks like, but I'm at the time I was 61, 62. By 65, 66, I'm out of here. So I don't know what it looks like yet, though, but I want to let you know you're the first to know, and I'm going to keep you updated. And they appreciated it. They did, and they rallied around me too.
Same thing here.
Mine was a quick sale, so I took my key people, and 7 of my 9 technicians had been with me over 10 years. So I sat down with them and my key people in the office prior to telling the rest of the staff, and took them out for dinner and talked about it. And it was great. And they were happy for me, right? They were happy for Michelle and I and they felt it was time for us, right? When I told the rest of the staff and the newer technicians and stuff, didn't get the same sentiment, So But the ones who were with me, who understood it and were happy for us, there was a reason they were with us that long, right?
Yeah.
They were key components of the business and they grew with us and they knew us and they were like family to us, right? And like Nick was saying, you will have people. We had two of the younger techs who were newer. They were going to quit right away as soon as I told the entire staff. And I'm like, why are you going to go to a new job? You feel out how the new company is going to operate before
Yeah.
taking the plunge to a new job. So it doesn't make any sense why you would just walk away rather than stay and feel out the new company.
Yeah, but that happens, Dan, right? It does happen. People, they all of a sudden they have this fear that change is something they can't tolerate. But yet, what you're asking them is the change. They're gonna it's change anyway, right? By going
Right,
to
they're
another
gonna
job.
change anyway to
Yeah,
a whole
yeah,
job,
yeah,
right? So
yeah.
why not? But
I
we
know.
did have two people leave.
Yeah,
One left before the transition, one left a couple
yeah.
years after, and they never even gave it a chance.
Dan, one of the talking points that you sent to me was have contracts for key employees. Tell me about that.
Well, and I think that's where this kind of goes. I feel had I had written contracts rather than verbal contracts, the younger people who got all edgy and some of the staff that got all edgy would have had something to fall back on, right? I would have said, look, I wrote a contract for you and you're guaranteed to year. If you choose to leave, that's up to you, but they're going to employ you for a year or, you're going to make the same pay or whatnot to put them more at ease.
Okay, so wait a minute. Let me understand. You gave them a contract inside of your agreement?
No, and that's what I wish I would have done. So I had a verbal contract from the company who bought me that everybody would make the same amount of money. Everybody had their job. Nothing would change. And I should have put that in writing. And I think that would have put people more at ease had I
Okay.
put that in writing.
Yeah.
Joe, have you ever heard of that? A lot of that?
Well, I've heard of it, but I've never explored that option. I never had. No.
You don't have to worry about that, Nick, since it's family.
You're right, but we're talking about transparency here with employees, but we're even transparent when we're hiring a new employee. And I think the new employees, when you're hiring them, want to know. Like, we interviewed a guy just yesterday, and going through the conversation, it was me, Chase, and our manager. And we told the guy, hey, Nick's retiring in 3 years. Chase is taking over. And I think that goes a long ways when you're a younger generation coming in, because they see some of these shops. This guy also had been at two shops that had got bought out by bigger chains, and he didn't like the buyout.
Yeah.
So it made him feel more at ease to know that, hey, this business hasn't been here 33 years. It's not going away. Now it's going to go hopefully another 33 years. So there's room for growth. Let's stay stagnant.
That's a great point for all the mechanical or technology specialists that are listening to us that are going to interview. Oh, it's 2025. I want to go see what's out there. And they go interview and they sit across from Dan, Joe, or Nick, and they say, they got gray hair. I wonder if I should ask them
what our plan is.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a great question to ask, because you may be trying to fill a slot just to keep the business successful, looking for somebody really good, but you're doing a deal in 3 weeks, right?
Right.
The guy comes on a week later, there's a new owner. I mean, come on. Oh,
That happens.
Yeah.
That happens a lot.
yeah.
So Nick, to this person that you're looking to hire, how did this person react when you told him the business
He was
is?
excited.
Well, you see, so and you got the
He's a
right
younger guy, and
yeah,
he wants to
yeah,
make sure that
yeah.
he's trying to find a home. He doesn't
Yeah.
want to find a home that's going to be there for 6 months and someone else can be running it. When
Because
he interviewed with
yeah.
Trace and I,
And that's the reason why I asked, because if you think about it, he's looking at the whole structure and the confidence that he has in the business. So he did his homework too. Then he did his due diligence. So
He did.
yeah, it works. It works.
Well, and the fact that it's going to Chase, which is basically going to be second generation, there's some confidence there.
There's stability there. There's a lot of stability. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. See, that's why I
Dan,
said earlier how you structure a deal and how all the different. It just they're like fingerprints. There's no two deals that are alike. No
No,
two
they're
deals.
not.
And I've helped clients sell their business. Clients. And let me tell you something. Every time you go through a deal like that, helping clients, whether you do it yourself or help clients, there's so many different aspects of that deal that you're not going to know everything until you start diving deep into it.
No,
Yeah,
there's so many ways to structure it. It's not even, we went through so many different scenarios. We ended up on a stock sale. For us,
Yeah.
that was the best deal. It's the best for me on taxes. It doesn't really hurt Case that much. He's going to lose the depreciation schedule, but we've depreciated everything out for the most part. We buy so much equipment every year that he can just start over. So that's how we're doing. It's a stock sale. Now the stock sale gets a little bit more complicated when someone comes in and they're half owner, because any distributions you take now, or any shares that you take out, you got to do it equal for him.
right.
It
Right.
muddies the waters a
Right.
little bit,
Right.
but that's fine. But we wrote it into our contract that all the money, like I'm trying to take out distributions each year, large distributions, to get part of my retirement out that way. When I take that out, half of that's got to go to him. We've got a contract wrote up that he has to give it right back. So he'll sign the check back to me. So there's all kinds of different ways to structure it.
Yep. Yep. That's why you need a great team
Attorney.
of advisors around you.
Oh, yeah.
You really do.
Absolutely.
Financial advisor, a great CPA accountant, a great attorney, somebody who really knows real estate and business deals. You're really going to do your homework. And that, again, don't wait until you're 62 years old and say, now I'm going to start. This has to be done early on in your business career. And every business goes through stages of, startup and crisis mode, and then you have growth mode. But as soon as you can see your way through and start getting some, your financials are in order, you got to start assembling a great team of advisors around you and a coach. Don't forget a coach.
Right. And the other thing is always have a business plan.
Yep.
Every year, update that business plan. And when I bought out my business partner years and years and years ago, I had a rock solid business plan. And that's one of the reasons that I got the loan from the bank to buy him out, is they had never seen such a good business plan.
There you go.
So as I moved forward with my general manager, he took that business plan and continued to grow it. And I would update it every year, what the growth of the company was going to be and stuff. So he had to go to the bank for money. We both had a rock solid business plan on where he was going to go with the company and what the projections were and all of that. So keeping a business plan from day one and updating it every year, and then passing that to the next gen or whoever's going to buy it and having them update it is key as well.
What's your advice, guys, on tire kickers?
You mean people looking to buy your business and
Yeah.
I've had that too. For years, I've had that. I've had customers approach me. I'm talking about 25 years ago. I'll buy your business. All right, how much? And then they give me a ridiculous figure. But that's going to happen. People are going to come in, and that's going to happen. Once you make that, again, it goes back to where you are in your career. But once you really made that solid decision, because I could have sold 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I wasn't ready. I just was not ready to sell. But once you make that decision and you feel it inside you, I'm ready to sell. This is it. Then you have to, hopefully at that point, you've done your due diligence, and like Dan and Nick said, everything's in place. And now it's kind of like plug and play. You go step by step to reach that final destination, the final act of actually handing the keys over. But the tire kickers, it's like they're out there. They really are. But a lot of guys are going to lowball you too. They're gonna come in and want to steal the business from you. But you got to be very, very careful. Again, if the business is not solvent, if it's not stable enough, if it doesn't show a consistent pattern of net profit and growth over time, doesn't mean you have to have growth every single year, but growth over time, net profit over time is growing, then you're going to have really something to sell.
Yeah, I would get 3 to 4 companies a year, showing interest in buying my business, and I wasn't interested. I never discussed anything with them. The company I actually sold to reached out to me in 2020, 2021, and again in 2022. And when they reached out in 22, my wife and I felt it was time. And that's when I sat down with my general manager.
Tire kickers to me sounds more like, maybe I'm going to use the wrong word here, a fantasy, to the point where, oh my God, somebody's interested in my business. Time out, stop, ask them if they'll sign a non-disclosure agreement.
Right.
You weed that out right away.
Yeah.
But if the tire kicker comes by, who knows, it could be your best deal of your whole life. you don't know that. Are the books in order, the people in order, the culture, is
There you
all
go.
that other stuff
Yeah.
working? So the beauty of part of what we're discussing, and why coaching is so important, and why successful, profitable businesses are critical. If a tire kicker does come by,
Well,
you
you know,
have something to
yeah,
sell.
You're
that's a
always
good point. That's a
you're
good
always
point, Carm.
get
That's a good point.
you're always going to get the broker, right? The guy who wants to sell your business, but he doesn't have anybody, right? And you're
Right.
going to get solicited constantly. But you're going to get that one person or one company that is really truly has the money and is interested. And like I said, I sold in 3 months because everything was in line.
That's unusual, Dan. You did that. That's unusual. 3 months is a very fast deal. That's a fast deal. Everything had to be in place. But again, that's a testament and a feather in your cap that you had everything in place. You had your business plan. You had your financials. Everything was in place, Dan. So it was actually easier. When you don't have things in place, sometimes that deal falls apart because you haven't done your homework. You haven't done your due diligence.
Right. Well, again, goes back to coaching, right?
Yeah.
Having a great coach in my corner, teaching me all of this. And I wasn't in the business, right? My general manager ran the day to day. I didn't run the day to day. So me being taken out of the business doesn't change anything.
That's a great way to end this episode, is to talk about the fact that if you're going to sell your business to an individual and you're the main person, if you're the hub of the wheel, an individual may evaluate that as a negative rather than a positive.
That's a great point, Carm.
Absolutely.
If you're I was never an absentee owner, but the business did run on its own. When I got sick in right during COVID, before I sold the business, I was out for about 6 months. I had 2 surgeries, but the business ran on cruise control. I didn't have to be there. So, again, that means that if your business is on cruise control, if it's not dependent upon you being there every single day, your business is worth more to a potential buyer. This is a great point, Carm. Great point.
Yeah, multiplier may be higher.
There you go.
One of my stores, I don't tend to at all. I've got a manager. He just reports numbers to me. Very rarely I go over there. It runs on cruise control.
Yeah.
It's a smaller location than our big location, and the evaluation was 4 to 5 times the multiplier there versus the location that I manage out of, just because
Yep.
from investors' point of view,
Yeah, it's
someone
turnkey.
could buy that store, knows nothing about automotive, and he could go in there and just buy that store and be making a profit from day one.
Nick, that's the goal. What you said is really a golden goal, because
Yeah.
you want to make it so that anybody can run this company. You don't have to be a technician or a service advisor or a former manager. Anyone. That's the way it should be. You should be working toward that goal. That's golden.
In most companies, when they buy you out, they want the owner to, when the owner's involved, they want you to save for 3 months or 6 months. The company
I know.
I sold to didn't want me. They didn't need me.
They didn't need you. That's
They
it.
didn't need me.
What did they say? What did they say? Go to Florida, Dan.
Just get out of here. Get your stuff out of the office and leave. Okay.
Wait a minute. You out. I know.
But I think it's definitely,
Get your stuff faster, right?
we're on to something. I mean, if you're going to sell the business, you got to be working on the business and not in the business. And you almost have to get it to where it can run without you being there to
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
a decent evaluation. Because no one wants to you don't want to buy a job. You want to buy a business.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think a lot of guys that are out there, if they're not prepared, they're buying a job. And we all got a job. They're not buying a business.
Yeah.
The financials are important. With me going through what I'm going through now, with Chase buying me out and him taking out a loan, it's very important to have clean books, your financials in that order.
Yep.
Because most people go to a bank to borrow money, and the bank's going to go through those balance sheets and everything with a fine-tooth comb. And if you don't know what you're talking about when you're meeting with that banker, you're probably not going to get the loan.
Yeah.
They want to see a great 5-year business plan, don't they?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
you see, and Chase has to be able to answer to all the questions over that business plan. And we've done episodes on this stuff and how some business plans have failed in the past, and they went back, did their homework, and went back to the same bank and say, hey, it looks like you're thinking smart now, and it looks like it's going to work. So that's important. Look, this is a heavy lift for anyone. And if you're
Yeah.
struggling, I mean, the point of this episode was to get, it was a great ensemble here, if you will, from your levels of experience. It's a heavy lift to decide to sell your business. Be careful not to take the first thing that comes by if it sounds too good to be true, because there could be a lot of attachments to an agreement that you weren't even prepared to see.
Yeah.
Property is an issue, taxes is an issue, but a very successful, high quality financial statements is going to be one of the most important keys if you're looking to maximize. And let's go back to this, guys. All the years that you put into this business, that your dream says, but honey, I'm going to get $1 million for this, but you haven't done anything except work hard, go in every day, bust your knuckles. You haven't done anything to build a business. And to your point earlier, Nick, you said the word hobby. And that's my dream, is to get the hobbyists up to the professional level. And that's why we've been doing this for almost 10 years. People to come on and listen to this and say, I just got a kick in the ass from Joe, Nick, and Dan. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's easy to go to work every day and bust your hump, and yeah, you can make some money, but you need to have a purpose of what you're going to do with that business, where you're taking that business, right? And part of that purpose is getting out, and a succession, right?
Yeah.
Moving the business to the next person. And that needs to be planned from day one.
I agree 100%, Dan.
Yeah. Great point, Dan. Hey, guys, thank you so much for this. Joe Marconi, former shop owner, Elite Worldwide coach. Dan Buss sold his business a couple of years ago, former shop owner, also with Elite Worldwide. And Nick Salas, who's right in the middle, moments away from an agreement with his son-in-law from Salas Auto Repair, Kansas City and Overland Park, Kansas. Thanks, guys. Brilliance. I appreciate this. I think this is going to go a long way to help people in our industry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Great time. Great time.